Quazi here. You know, everywhere I look, I see people struggling with age-old problems that have long been solved by the ancients. But for some reason, they just still keep reappearing. I can't help but think of a quote that I heard by Naval Ravikant. It goes along the lines of, "Old problems have old solutions." Everything always points me towards the study of ancient civilizations. I mean, there are just so many unexplained phenomena that remain unexplained even to this day. Ancient societies possessed knowledge that allowed them to achieve incredible things that we're still trying to explain even today. How crazy is that? Stuff from 3,000, 5,000 years ago. And it seems like this knowledge has been preserved and passed down through secret societies and traditions for centuries, only accessible to a select few. Why? These ancient societies possessed information and technology that allowed them to achieve amazing things that weren't available to anyone else. Now, on the surface, these teachings, when you read them in books, when you come across them, they kind of seem fruity and unrelatable, overly simplified almost. But what if we're misinterpreting them? What if there was something much deeper than what it appears to be on the surface? And if we look throughout history, clues have been left. The pyramids in Egypt, the Moai statues of Easter Island, Machu Picchu, just to name a few. And it was the access to this specific knowledge that allowed them to build these incredible structures and create these amazing empires, awe-inspiring landmarks that still, to this day, leave experts clueless as to how they were made. But what if I told you that this type of knowledge is available to you right now? This previously hidden information has not only been revealed, but it's starting to get revealed in bits and pieces, allowing a select few to access the same powerful insights that have influenced these great minds throughout history. One quote comes to mind: "The lips of wisdom are closed except to the ears of understanding." So look, in this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to reveal to you these secrets within 7 ancient books that are available to us today that changed my life forever, and how they can change yours too. Now, I truly believe that these 7 ancient books contain the true essence of reality creation and information on how you can begin to take the reins to mastering your destiny today. Now, these books I'm about to reveal contain some of the most powerful knowledge that has been repressed in today's society in favor of modern teachings. But when you study the information within their pages, you'll have access to the same knowledge that once allowed ancient civilizations to build incredible structures and create amazing artwork and truly achieve unbelievable feats. Here's what was particularly curious to me though, when I was studying all of these 7 ancient books. What I found is that there's one common theme that keeps recurring. One main lesson that's very subtle. Even though these books were created across different centuries, countries, and religions. Now, by the end of this video, I'm going to share with you exactly what that one thing is, what one common theme is, in a way that you can begin to understand it. But in order to fully comprehend it, we have to make sense of all the contextual knowledge that I'll share about each and every single individual book. So please make sure that you watch this video in full. And with that, let's get started. Okay, so before we get started with this video, just a quick note. As I'm doing these and as I'm announcing every single one of these books, what I want to do is say to you what the book is, give you a little summary of it from my words, and then give you the main lesson that I took away from it. What's interesting to note is with multiple of these books, I've actually read them multiple times. Because these were so good, I just keep returning to them. And I'm always a big believer of, if you find something good, like a course, a program, or a teaching, or a book, it's better to read it multiple times than start to look for the next shiny object and look for the next book or the next resource. And when I reread something, sometimes things that I've missed, I get epiphanies off again, like things that I could have missed reading it the first time around. And also when you come back to it, you know, when you're at a different level of consciousness. Before, when you read the book, you were at a certain level of consciousness where you couldn't comprehend certain concepts. But then when you come back to it, especially spiritual teachings, you start to pick up on different things in the book. Okay, so the first of these is one of the most popular occult books of the 20th century, the Kebalian. Now, I really love this book. This book is thought to have based from teachings of the Emerald Tablet back in the 8th century, around 1200 years old. Now, a couple of the things that I really love about this book is it encompasses a lot of modern spiritual ideas, and you can, once you read this, you can fully understand why the different ideas that we have with the law of attraction, with manifestation, how they came about, the law of polarity, these were all mentioned in this book from the very start. Now, one of the main lessons that I learned from it is that everything in the universe is vibration. And when they said that, and when I really read through that section of how everything vibrates, everything moves, nothing is at rest, it allowed me to fully understand that our internal world is truly what shapes the external world. Okay, so the internal world, as most people believe it, they believe that it's static, it's not really moving, it doesn't influence anything, but everything is connected, everything is vibration, everything moves, everything rotates, everything vibrates, nothing is static. Okay, everything has an energy. And the other thing that was interesting to me to know, and I believe this is one of the first laws, is that everything is within the all. And the all encompasses everything, therefore there is nothing to worry about. The epiphany that this led me to was in understanding that if everything is within the all, then every possible reality that can be manifested is already within the all, right? It cannot be outside of the all. Therefore, in accordance with the law of vibration, if we attune our internal world, our thoughts and our feelings, to that particular sector of reality, then that will also come into being, we'll begin experiencing it. So it's kind of like the channels of a television. They all already exist within the all, within the network, right? But we're just not tuning into them. When we change the channel and we tune into them, we project them, we manifest them into physical reality. And this whole journey of reality creation is doing just that. Choosing the desired channel that we would like to attune to by changing our own internal state of vibration. The other interesting thing that I took away from this book was the principle of polarity. It basically says that everything has a polarity to it. Everything has a masculine and a feminine, as above, so below, within, without, masculine, feminine, black, white. Everything has its own opposite. And that was interesting for me to see, was when you especially delve into human relationships, you sort of see this happening. Like even in masculine, feminine relationships, the male might be a bit more feminine, more attuned to their feminine energy, right? More in their feminine side. Whereas the female in the relationship is more attuned to their masculine energy. So there's different dynamics in different relationships. But more importantly, what I learned was how to apply this to daily life in understanding how to keep myself in balance. So in this journey of reality creation, the one thing you always want to fight is imbalance, because if you're not in balance, then reality will create your balance for you. It will continually throw tests and challenges at you to bring you back to balance. So you always have to understand this law of polarity and understand when you're being a little too rigid and when you have to open yourself up, when you're being a little too open and when you have to close yourself off. I remember an interesting discussion I was having with one of my buddies, Bashar, and he was saying how in life, and he's a very successful business owner, I did a podcast with him on our podcast channel, and he grew from like barely making anything, being in so much debt, to doing $2 million a month with his Amazon FBA coaching business. And what he taught me was that at every single stage in your life, there'll be periods of when you're very open and periods of when you have to be closed and you focus and you just go monk mode, right? And so that was interesting for me to understand, because that literally, this book talks about the law of polarity. So those were the interesting, most important lessons that I took from the Kebalian, which is based around ancient Hermetic philosophy. Now the second book, this was written even further back, the Bhagavad Gita. So this is the Bhagavad Gita. This book was thought to have been written 2nd century BCE, before Common Era, before Christ, whatever you want to call it. And it's a very, very ancient book, and it's very popular in Hinduism, and it's one of the sacred texts. I'm not going to spoil the Bhagavad Gita for you and also butcher it, but I will share with you some of the main lessons that I took away from it. The main lesson that I personally took away from it, and I remember reading this a couple years ago. I remember being at a point in my life where I was so attached to the outcome and everything was so important, and I had to get a particular outcome. I had to like make certain amounts of sales in my business and make money, or else I would improve myself. And this is in chapter 2, verse 7 of this book. Here's the quote that really shook me to my core. "You have a right to perform your prescribed duties, but you're not entitled to the fruits of your actions. Never consider yourself to be the cause of the results of your activities, nor be attached to inaction." Chapter 2, verse 7. This taught me the importance of process orientation as opposed to goal orientation. So in life, when we pursue a particular goal, we become so mesmerized and hypnotized by the goal, we forget the process, right? But when you become very, very process oriented and you go into a process oriented haze, the goal just happens as a byproduct. So if in the instance of growing a YouTube channel, let's say, if I keep thinking about how many subscribers I've gotten every single day, then I'll probably look at one instance or one day in which I didn't get a lot of views or I didn't get a lot of subscribers, and then I'll be frustrated. I'll be looking at what I didn't get as opposed to what I did get, right? And so when that happens, it will affect my state of being, and I will become attached to the outcome, which will start to affect my actions. When I get attached to the outcome and I'm looking for the negative outcome, then my vibration, my state of being gets aligned to the negative, what I don't want, and therefore my actions follow suit. Do you understand how this is happening? It's literally what we talked about with the last book. It's funny how they're all linked. When I align myself to what I don't want, then I will take action that is more stifled, that is less open and free, and that is more careful. I'll be manipulative. I will try to manipulate an outcome. I will try to make a video and try to copy someone else based on what's proven. But what makes you more successful is the freedom, is the authenticity, and owning your own skin, right? But I won't be doing any of that. I also won't be able to listen to my intuition. I'll be listening to someone else, some signal outside, some Twitter post, or looking at someone else and what they're saying, and that'll make me very fearful. So when you become process-oriented, you close yourself off to all the outside influences and you just double down on the process and you start to enjoy it. You start to do different things. You become creative with it. Then you start to get into that energy of success, right? The vibration of gratitude, the higher levels of vibration, okay? And that is surprisingly what leads you to success. And eventually when you arrive at the goal that you've set, like a lot of people, they have it on their vision boards that they want to manifest something, but then they forget about it and they just focus on taking action and getting involved in the process, and all of a sudden it happens. They go back through their old stuff. They're like, oh my God, I set this as a goal for so long ago. And they're shocked, right? It's not like they're thinking about it every single day. So there again comes that balance, because you still have to have a goal, but you can't get attached to the goal, right? It says, never consider yourself to be the cause of the results of your activities, nor be attached to inaction, right? There's a balance there. There's a fine line. There's a yin and yang there. So what I took away from this was not only process orientation, but also humbling myself. Because remember, if you don't humble yourself, life will humble you, okay? Life will throw challenges at you that will show you that how insignificant you are. And never take credit for your results, take credit for your actions, and become unattached from the outcome and move freely with the process with no care for what happens. Okay? So that is the Bhagavad Gita. The third book that profoundly changed my life was the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. Now, why this was so important for me was because there's one line in this book. It goes something like this. So this was written in ancient Sanskrit, and Patanjali was thought to be one of the greatest sages of all time. Before Patanjali, you got to understand, like, yoga was taught as a way of life, but then people started to forget it. Patanjali compiled it into a more intellectual format. And this book literally begins by saying, and now yoga. He goes on to say, like, okay, you've tried alcohol, you've tried drugs, you've tried sex, you've tried food, you've tried it all. You've tried all the pleasures of life and you still haven't attained the ultimate. And now yoga. That's how the book begins. And so Patanjali was thought to be so powerful, so intellectual, so knowledgeable, that historians think that this was a compilation of maybe 7 or more different authors. It's kind of crazy to think. And one of the main lessons I took away from this book, there's one phrase, I'm going to butcher it, Abhyasa Vairagya Bhyam Tat Nirodha. And this literally means in order to achieve a state of yoga, one must develop both practice and detachment. Okay? So the key words here are vairagya and abhyasa, which means balancing, learning how to balance effort with surrender. This kind of goes back to the talk of being process-oriented, because when you're process-oriented, you have a firm resolve to move towards a particular direction, but you have no attachment to the outcome. And it's funny how this keeps recurring every single place you look, right? And when I started to practice this, again, I started to see miraculous changes happen in my life when I forgot about the results, because the more I thought about the results, the more I would get frustrated as to why it wasn't happening. The next book is a very kooky one. You're going to think this is kooky, but it's called I Am That by Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj. Now, I don't recommend that you read this book, frankly speaking. Why? Because when I read this book, I had a whole year of I was confused. I went into this deep, dark pit of despair, and I was like, what's the point of anything? And I just became like real nihilistic for a whole year. So it requires a certain level of maturity to read and perform the exercises here. But the integration of this teaching with actual daily life will completely change you forever. And what I took away from this was the importance of staying as the state of awareness and understanding that beyond everything, what is there? Awareness. So how he goes on to talk about this concept is the world that you're seeing, that you're perceiving, exists because you exist. Please think about this. If you didn't exist, would there be a world? You may say that there is, but is there? You don't know that. So he goes on to suggest that the world exists because you exist. The world is within you. The other thing that this really encouraged me to do was redefine reality, because I used to think for a very long time that this was reality, right? What I'm seeing around me is reality, but this cannot be true. Because back then I didn't have a definition of reality. And now my definition of reality is that which that never changes. What is it that never changes? If this is changing, if all of these are changing, then this can't be real. Reality is that which that never changes. What's the core substance beyond all of this material, all of this changing material that never changes? And that is awareness, the state of I am. Please think about this. When you observed yourself when you were 5 years old and you existed, that same observation, the same witnessing has still remained when you turned 25, when you turned 45, 35, right? That same state of being, that same awareness, that quality of awareness has never changed, right? So there is something within each and every single one of us that is real. The mission is to tap into that. And that's what this book really talks about. And I love all of Nisargadatta's teachings. One of my buddies, Sunny, from Sunny Sharma, he does a great job at compiling all of these teachings. He has a YouTube channel, so you can check his one out. But that's this book. Next up, we have the classic. Can you guess? Think and Grow Rich. Now, this wasn't that old of a book. I believe this was written maybe late 1800s, if not early 1900s. I'm not 100% sure. But the reason I put this book down is because this was life-changing for me, but not in the way that you would think. So in this book, there's a concept of the burning desire. And every single person who starts off in the manifestation journey falls into this trap of having a burning desire. But what I realized from reading this book and actually performing the exercise in the first few chapters, Napoleon Hill talks about this exercise where you write down on a piece of paper, I'm so happy and grateful that by January 1st, 20-something, I have $100,000 in my bank account. And I did that for a year. And I read that morning and night and nothing happened. Nothing happened. And, maybe that was just part of the process of something happening, but nothing happened at the time, and I thought that was complete BS. And what I understood about this book that is kind of BS is the concept of a burning desire. But I think people misinterpret what Napoleon Hill meant by burning desire. People confuse desire and intention, okay? So people think that when you have a burning desire, you automatically have intention. That is completely BS. You can sit on a couch and desire all you want and daydream about your goals all you want, but if you don't transmute that energy into intention, nothing will happen. Intention cannot be there without desire. You first need desire to have intention. So that's what I really realized from this book. It's not desire that makes the difference. It is intention that truly makes the difference, that makes any movement happen. And there's two types of intention that we all possess. Inner intention, my resolve to do something, and outer intention, my resolve to have something. My resolve to have something will take precedence over my resolve to do something. You may do something, but it does not guarantee that you have. But if you have something, it guarantees that you have, right? So always begin with the resolve to have something, one way or another. If I do something or if I don't do something, I will have it. It will happen. It is already done with the law of assumption, as Neville Goddard would point out, right? The other interesting and kooky thing about this book is Napoleon Hill goes through a whole chapter talking about sex transmutation. And this is basically transmuting sexual energy by withholding sex or any other acts that are similar, like masturbation, and channeling that energy into your goal. Now, I don't know how true that is because his study that he did was based on him noticing how people in their 50s and 60s all of a sudden became very, very wealthy. Now, there could be many reasons why that is. First of all, like if you have people who've worked hard their entire 20s, 30s, 40s, they're reaping the rewards of their efforts in their 50s and 60s, right? So that could be a potential factor. But Napoleon Hill, interestingly, chooses to attribute that to their lack of sex, which is funny for me to see. But there is definitely an important lesson in there. And it's that if you have leakage in your energy, right? If you're constantly striving for food or sex or some other compulsion, there is less energy available for you to channel into what you want, right? The thing that you want to commit this life energy to. So all of those desires that we have, it's life energy. So if you think of a river and a channel, if the channel has many leaks, then the water can't be properly channeled to the goal, the ultimate destination that you want to deliver the water towards. So think of your energy as a river and think of your focus as a channel. And in transmuting the sex energy or any other energy, we're transmuting it by focusing all of our efforts to one particular area. Okay, but then again, the law of balance comes into play. Don't deprive yourself, don't deny yourself, but know when to deny yourself, know when to focus. There's a right and wrong time for it. So that's what I learned from Think and Grow Rich. Now, next up, we have a very, very interesting book, the Tao Te Ching. This was written by Lao Tzu in the year, it's thought to be in the year 400 BC, who I believe was a teacher of Confucius. This guy was thought to be one of the most enlightened masters, and this is kind of written in the style of poetry, in the style of like a verse, and there's just some very interesting messages in here, but one particularly interesting message, which again keeps recurring, and it's the concept of Wu Wei. One of the things he says is that Tao Te Ching tells us that true sayings seem contradictory, and there are possibly few sayings more contradictory than those relating to the principle of non-action, Wu Wei. For example, we're advised to act by not acting, do by not doing. This completely blew my mind, because this again went completely in line with balancing effort and surrender. But Lao Tzu goes as far to say, don't act, don't do. Because isn't that the highest possible efficiency? Having everything happen in your life the way that you want it, without you having to lift a single finger. Now, not everyone can do that because not everyone has the Messiah's mastery of intention, like Lao Tzu did. But there's an element of truth in there. Instead of focusing so much on acting, on doing, on making noise, because every time we act and every time we take some form of action, we're creating more disturbance. Right? We're increasing the entropy of our world. And, there are some theories that eventually it will lead to heat death. Like if there's enough entropy, if the universe gets to enough chaos, there will be no more energy to change form. And therefore, there'll just be like an excessive amount of heat that will just burn everything up. This is just the second law of thermodynamics. I'm thinking back from physics in college. But there is some truth to that. So you should always try to achieve and accomplish things from the least possible resistance path. And the right path is always the path of least resistance. Have you noticed this? Usually it's the simplest solution that's always the best solution. And you arrive at this conclusion by going through all of the complex solutions and doing all the complex shit, only to go back to the simple one and be like, I was here all along. And there's this great quote that goes something like, before enlightenment, fetch wood, carry water. After enlightenment, fetch wood, carry water. But then just in the middle, you're all confused and you're doing weird stuff, right? So this again goes to that lesson of being process oriented and finding the least possible action or making things as simple as possible. And this completely changed the way I approach business. And if you look at how we've structured our business, I keep it very simple, very lean. We don't have big staff. We don't have a ton of products. It's just very simple and very lean, and just there's one website. There aren't multiple websites. I don't do multiple YouTube channels. Everything is just kept very, very simple. And this keeps everything peaceful. You know, it's beyond my wildest dreams. And allows you to focus your efforts in one direction as well, transmuting all of your energy. So that was the Tao Te Ching. Next up, last but not least, book number 7, Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. So who was this Marcus guy? Marcus was a Roman emperor from 161 AD to 180, and he practiced this thing called religion or philosophy called Stoicism. And he basically wrote about his own Stoic practice in all of these journals. And you might be asking, what is Stoicism? It's defined as the endurance of hardship without feelings of complaint. Being stoic. You're stoic. Now, I don't fully agree with Stoicism per se, but there are definitely some truths to there. And what's interesting to note from this book is there's a triad that Stoicism follows. And this triad is perception, action, and will. The perception part of it literally means seeing things as they are without subjective observation, meaning you don't have a feeling attached to it. Your house burns down, it's neither good nor bad. Someone close to you in your family dies, it's neither good nor bad, right? You don't let your perception get colored by your identities and what you're attached to. Number 2, action. And this relates more to selfless action. Treating others as they deserve to be treated, not as you would like to treat them, which I found very interesting. Meaning, like, if someone deserves bad treatment, then you treat them badly. Maybe this is what it's not suggesting, but maybe I'm misinterpreting it, right? But that's how I saw it. And finally, will. The attitude that you have to things that are not in your control. So when something bad happens, do you have a willing acceptance of it or a resistance? And it kind of ties to your perception. And the quote that goes in this book that Marcus Aurelius talks about is objective judgment, unselfish action, willing acceptance of everything. And this is how you lead a very successful life. And this emperor just basically recounts his journey and just shares massive wisdom throughout this book. And you know how he was able to keep himself humble. Eventually, his emperor was wrecked by his son, which was unfortunate, but still the teachings in here are very valid. And so the common lesson from all of these books, you can probably guess what it is by now. And it's the principle of balance. Because, like I mentioned before, if you don't keep yourself in balance, life will create your balance for you. Okay? Life will throw tests and challenges at you. And I realized this because when you place too much importance on that final outcome and you're too attached to the outcome, what happens? Well, your importance level goes up, your outer importance level goes up, and when that happens, with your thought energy, you create an imbalance in the field. If you believe that there's a quantum field that's sort of homogeneous, attributing too much meaning to one particular area of your life, you create an inhomogeneity in the field. The field kind of gets a little dense over here. And when you do that, life will try its best to balance out this field. So there is an entropic balance. So there's no longer something bunched up over here. So life will always try to take the path of least resistance to creating balance. So there's two types of importances that we have. the inner importance. When I believe that I'm too important, we don't humble ourselves. And when you do that, life will throw tests at you to show you that you're not the shit. And then outer importance, when we think something outside of us is so important, like our career, our relationship, or something else. And so you want to make sure that you keep all of those importances in check. And that's one of the biggest things you can do to becoming a powerful creator of your reality. Okay? So I know this is all great, but what I want you to do right now is, if you want to take advantage of all of these, the best way to do it, to manipulate your own vibration, to sort of create your own reality, I've found in my life, is through a process known as identity shifting. I recently just created a 48-minute video outlining this whole process. I think this is one of the most valuable videos out there for free on YouTube. And over 1,000 of our paid clients have used this same exact process to make a permanent change in their lives. Because remember, in life, it doesn't matter what we do, what we have, ultimately, everything is governed by who we become. So why not start there? Why not start at the being level? In order to do that, we have to learn how to consciously shift into the self that we need to become in order to effortlessly live the life that we want to live. That is how you become a reality creator. So if you want to watch that video, you can click right here to watch it in full. It's on YouTube, it's 48 minutes long, and I promise you it's the most valuable thing you'll see. So click on here, watch the video, and I'll see you in the next video.